Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name is Casey. I share simple style tips and outfit ideas that work for me as a petite woman. I like keeping things comfortable, easy to wear, and still stylish. So, if you're also figuring out what works for your frame, you might find something helpful here. Today, I wanted to look at a house with one of the strongest legacies in fashion, Christian Dior. This is a brand I have wanted to research more deeply because Dior is not just recognizable, it is foundational. It is one of those names that comes up whenever people talk about elegance, femininity, couture, and the idea of fashion as fantasy. So, in this video, I want to look at Dior through its history, its brand identity, the values it continues to project, how it grew into a global luxury force, and why it still sells today. To understand Dior, you really have to start with its beginning. Christian Dior founded his fashion house in 1946, and the defining turning point came very quickly after that. On February 12th, 1947, at 30 Avenue Montaigne in Paris, Dior presented his first collection, the one that introduced what became known as the New Look. Dior itself describes that first show as shaping a new idea of elegance, and the bar suit became the emblem of Dior style. That moment matters because it was not only a successful debut, it was a reset in how post war femininity could look. The new look is still one of the clearest reasons Dior remains so important in fashion history. At a time when the world was emerging from wartime austerity, Dior presented a silhouette that emphasized rounded shoulders, a cinched waist, and a full skirt. It brought back drama, structure, softness, and theatrical beauty. In other words, Dior was not simply making clothes. He was offering an image of transformation. And that idea that fashion can create fantasy and reshape how women imagine themselves has stayed at the core of the house ever since. That is also where Dior's brand identity begins to take shape. Even today, the house presents itself through the language of dream, elegance, heritage, and exceptional craftsmanship. LVMH describes Christian Dior's heritage as a savoir faire inspired by excellence and says that every creation reflects the balance between preserving time honored technique and embracing innovation. That is important because it shows that Dior's identity is not built only on history, it is built on the idea that heritage has to stay alive through modern creation. And I think that is what separates Dior from brands that are merely historic. Some houses become important because of their archive, but Dior has managed to make its archive feel active. The codes of the brand still matter. The silhouette still matters. The idea of femininity, refinement, and visual drama still matters. But those codes are constantly being reinterpreted, whether through couture, ready to wear, leather goods, jewelry, or beauty. That gives the house continuity, which is essential in luxury, but it also gives it flexibility, which is essential for relevance. When it comes to mission and vision, I would frame Dior less like a typical corporate brand and more like a house with a guiding philosophy. Officially, Dior Beauty states its mission as to only leave beauty as a legacy, tying that idea to emissions reduction, biodiversity, and responsible sourcing. On the fashion side, Dior speaks more broadly about preserving the legacy of its creations, reducing environmental footprint, and having a positive impact on society, while also emphasizing social responsibility and the empowerment of women as part of the brand's DNA. So rather than saying Dior has one simple mission statement across everything, I think the more accurate reading is that Dior's vision combines beauty, excellence, heritage, and responsibility. That social dimension is worth noting too. Dior states that from the very beginning, the empowerment and independence of women have been at the heart of its identity, and it continues to connect its social commitment to that idea. Whether someone agrees with every aspect of how luxury brands communicate those values is a separate conversation. But as far as official brand positioning goes, Dior clearly wants to present itself as a house where femininity is not passive or decorative, but expressive, strong, and culturally meaningful. Now, if we look at growth, this is where Dior becomes not just a historic maison, but a modern luxury powerhouse. Christian Dior sits within LVMH's fashion and leather goods division, and LVMH continues to spotlight Dior as one of its key maisons. Recent LVMH updates describe Christian Dior as maintaining strong creative momentum and continuing to fuse heritage with modernity through fashion shows, exhibitions, and product launches. That tells us Dior is not surviving on nostalgia alone. It remains a central player in the luxury system today. Its growth also comes from range. Dior is not just couture, it is couture, ready to wear, bags, shoes, jewelry, accessories, and beauty. That matters because in luxury, cultural prestige and commercial strength often work together. Couture creates dream and image. Leather goods and beauty help scale that image into products more people can buy into. Dior has been exceptionally strong at maintaining this ladder of aspiration. A person may never buy a couture gown, but they can still enter the world of Dior through fragrance, lipstick, a wallet, sunglasses, or eventually a handbag. That kind of layered entry point is one of the reasons luxury houses like Dior keep expanding while still protecting their aura. This is an inference based on Dior and LVMH's product structure and positioning. And that leads into why Dior still sells. First, it sells because it has one of the strongest identities in fashion. People know what Dior represents, even if they cannot always describe it perfectly. It signals elegance, polish, heritage, and high taste. Second, it sells because its symbols are recognizable. The bar jacket, the couture silhouette, canage, Lady Dior, Miss Dior, the visual codes of the house. These are not random products. They are brand language. And in luxury, recognizable language creates desire because it allows people to buy not just an object, but belonging to a world. It also still sells because Dior understands spectacle. Luxury is not only about quality, it is also about storytelling. Dior has remained very good at turning its history into something emotionally legible in the present through exhibitions, shows, craftsmanship narratives, and carefully protected symbols of the house. That keeps the brand feeling elevated rather than ordinary. And once a luxury house loses that sense of elevation, it becomes much harder to justify its place. Dior has largely avoided that problem by staying very clear about who it is. So, in the end, Dior still matters because it built more than a successful fashion label. It built a world shaped by the new look, by couture discipline, by visual elegance, by craft, and by a belief that fashion should still carry dream and meaning. That world has been expanded, modernized, and commercialized over time, but the identity at its center is still recognizable. And maybe that is why Dior still sells. Not just because it is luxurious, and not just because it is historic, but because it has kept its image powerful enough to make people want to buy into that world again and again. In luxury, that kind of consistency is everything. If there's another brand you want me to feature next in this series, let me know below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.